Nigel Farage has hit the nail on the head once again, folks. He's taken one look at Labour's latest budget and called it what it is, a disaster waiting to happen. In today's video, we'll examine and discuss this development and bring you the latest news from across the country. But first, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any crucial political updates.
Was clever. The fuel duty free is very, very welcome, especially for those living in rural parts of our country. But for me, the big one, of course, is the 1p a pint off draft beer, which I've worked out will save me over £1 a week. So I'm particularly thrilled with that. But economically, I sat listening to the numbers thinking this budget is illiterate. I don't know who's doing the sums, whether perhaps it's the Right Honourable Member for Hackney North, but the sums do not work.
The Labour Party is trying to sell us on a vision of higher wages, more jobs and a fairer economy. But dig a little deeper, and it's clear this budget is nothing more than a collection of big promises that will put everyday Britons under more financial strain, not less. Let's break it down. Labour's headline move was to hike the minimum wage, and we can't deny it sounds great on the surface. Who doesn't want people earning a bit more to get by? But here's the reality. For small businesses, this isn't just a minor adjustment, it's a massive burden. Isabel Oakeshott from Talk International said it right, calling it astonishingly naive. Labour is acting like employers can magically cover these increased wages without any impact. But who's paying for this? It's the small business owners who have to either cut hours, let staff go, or worse, shut down. Farage, always one for straight talk, couldn't resist pointing out that this kind of budgeting doesn't add up in any real-world scenario. If anything, Labour's proposal will cause more layoffs and less security for the very workers they claim to protect. What's Labour's big plan for funding all of this? Well, they're taking the easy route, taxing the wealthy. But here's the kicker. The wealthy aren't sitting ducks. They're going to find a way to dodge this. Labour thinks it's striking a blow for equality, but let's not kid ourselves. Anyone with serious money can move it abroad, invest differently, or work with advisors to minimise taxes. This tax plan isn't for the people, it's an illusion. Labour's out of touch if they think this will somehow bring in the funds to cover their promises. And the worst part? When the wealthy evade these taxes, it's everyday Brits who end up shouldering the burden. Then we have Barry from Cumbria, who called in with a voice that speaks for many. Barry runs a small business in hospitality and cleaning, and he's done what so many others do, built something from the ground up to support his family and employ people in his community. He says it outright. You can't keep taxing the people who actually create jobs in this country. Barry knows that small businesses are already hanging by a thread, especially after the hit they took during COVID. Now, with these extra costs from Labour, he has to consider cutting staff or hiking prices, neither of which helps the economy. Labour, meanwhile, is sitting in Westminster dreaming up policies that ignore the real struggles of small business owners like Barry. Labour talks about fairness, but where's the fairness in punishing those who actually work hard to create jobs? And let's talk about those growth figures. Labour is promising that with their budget, we'll see a boost to our GDP, a big economic upswing. But even the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, projects growth of just 1.1% this year. Farage, always the realist, pointed out that if Labour doesn't hit at least 2.5% growth, they can forget about funding their promises. To be blunt, the numbers just don't work. The markets have already seen through the smoke and mirrors, with gilt yields spiking in response to this budget. Investors aren't buying what Labour is selling, and frankly, neither should we. We need policies that will drive real growth and create actual opportunities, not fantasy projections that fall apart under scrutiny. The Labour Party is gambling with our future, and it's clear that we're the ones who will pay the price. This isn't about helping the people, it's about pushing an agenda, hoping we don't notice the holes in their plan. Keir Starmer might think he's on the path to winning support, but we've got to ask ourselves if we can trust Labour with the economy. Look at the facts. The numbers don't work. The small businesses are being hit hardest. And this tax the wealthy rhetoric is an empty promise that leaves middle-income families footing the bill. Shifting to another noteworthy piece of information, Rachel Reeves has dampened expectations for stronger growth by announcing a record tax hike of up to £40 billion, which could negatively impact the living standards of the public. Millions of workers will face stagnant wages over the next 2 years as the Chancellor utilises her first budget to exert pressure on both employees and businesses. She has warned that taxes may be increased to ensure funding for higher public spending. In this context, Ms Reeves has committed to restoring stability to the economy and rebuilding Britain through a wave of investment, while also unveiling the first Labour budget in 14 years. This also marks the largest tax increase since records began in 1948. One of the highlights of the tax increases is the assault on employers' national insurance contributions, aimed at raising £25 billion. Additionally, higher stamp duty for second homeowners, increased capital gains tax, along with a series of changes related to inheritance tax for landowners and pensions, will generate billions more. Ms Reeves has attempted to mitigate the negative impact of these taxes by ruling out speculation regarding fuel tax increases and pledging to extend the freeze on income tax thresholds. However, a shock occurred when the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, revised down its growth forecast for much of this decade. The reason given was that excessive spending could lead to higher interest rates for a longer duration and increased mortgage costs. Economists have warned that the sugar rush from higher spending will soon fade, leading to years of lower growth and higher prices in what the Conservative Party has labelled a Halloween horror show, accusing Ms Reeves of breaking election promises. Concerns from investors have also driven up borrowing costs in the UK, while cutting expectations for the Bank of England's ability to reduce interest rates. This follows Ms Reeves' announcement of a significant and sustainable increase in public spending, including £25 billion for the NHS and nearly £12 billion for schools over the next 2 years. Part of this funding will come from an annual £32 billion loan, which is expected to raise annual interest payments to as much as £122 billion by the end of this decade. Richard Hughes, the chair of the OBR, stated that this increase in borrowing is one of the largest in decades. He emphasised, "This budget brings one of the largest increases in spending, taxation and borrowing in any financial event in history. The majority of the tax increase will come from the £25 billion that employers must pay through national insurance, with the main tax rate rising by 1.2 percentage points to 15% starting in April. The threshold at which employers begin to pay national insurance for employees will be cut nearly in half, from £9,100 to £5,000. According to the OBR, the tax increases will add about £800 for each employee annually, and most of this money will be passed on to employees through wage reductions, although the Labour Party has pledged to protect workers' rights. This is expected to push the tax burden to a record level of 38.2% of GDP, with higher taxes and spending maintaining both the scale of the state and the tax burden at permanently elevated levels compared to pre-pandemic times. The OBR has also issued warnings about a decline in living standards over the next 2 years as the impact of Ms Reeves' tax policies begins to be felt through lower wage growth. So what do you think? Are you as tired as we are of these empty promises and reckless policies? Is it time for Labour to stop playing with our livelihoods and get serious about real economic solutions? Let us know in the comments. And if you're fed up with Labour's games and want to see genuine change, hit like, subscribe and join the conversation. This is our future on the line. Let's hold these politicians accountable.